Hello, I hope this is working. um, welcome. Yeah. Welcome to my first live stream in a while. And I know this is very spontaneous. Yeah. So for those of you who don't know, I'm Axel, from Get Speaking English, and I'm doing this stream just for a couple of reasons. First of all, I wanted to experiment with a new format instead of doing the live lessons for B2 First, C1 Advanced Prep. I wanted to read this article instead so we can learn a bit about the pronunciation of words and the vocabulary and things. Secondly, also, I've been having a lot of issues with my audio and things lately. I've done a ton of work on my computer, so I just wanted to make sure everything works. So there may be some technical issues here and there. I was fiddling a lot with things this morning, but hopefully everything will work out fine. And this will be fine. Yeah. So I'll just get right to it. I do have the comments open on Facebook. If you want to leave a comment and say hi, feel free. I would love to hear what you have to say. But for the most part, though, I'm just going to be looking at this article, reading it so we can hear the pronunciation, talking about some of the vocabulary in here that I think will be useful for you for talking about the topic of sustainability. And yeah, and then in the future, if I continue with this program with this format, I will figure out a way to make it a little bit more interactive. Yeah. So if you haven't been watching me or seeing what I've been sharing on social media, I've been sharing a lot of posts and activities lately about sustainability. And I've been offering some conversational classes on this article right now. So like I said, we're going to go through this article together. I'm going to read it. You'll be able to hear the pronunciation. I'll discuss some of the useful phrases and vocabulary that comes up. And then afterwards, you can practice some of your new vocabulary and phrases either by using the speaking activities and questions I share online, or you could also book a class with me and we could talk about some of the issues addressed in this article as well. So I'll leave the information about how to book a class in the description of this video or after. Yeah, so let's get right to it then, and hopefully this will be fine. So just a little background information, some background information about here. So the title of this article is Why the Sustainable Development Goals for 2030 Are More Important Than Ever. And so some background about this. So the sustainable development goals are basically they're kind of a blueprint for how the world should ideally cooperate uh for creating a better world for everybody in the future. So creating a more sustainable future so humans and animals we can all coexist on this planet for the long term. And there are 17 goals in general. Sorry, in total. And I'll leave a link maybe to this website here, but there are 17 goals. And the reason that I was looking at this in particular when thinking about sustainability was it was a good sort of jumping off point for talking about this topic. Um, so the goals address a lot of different key challenges. So, for example, poverty, equality, climate change, threats to the environment, peace and justice. And when we think about the topic of sustainability, we could kind of think of it in actually three key areas. So, we could think about it in terms of the economy. So, So economic sustainability. So the economy, economic sustainability. We could also think about it in terms of society. So social sustainability. So how we all interact with one another, communities, things like that. We could also think about it too in terms of the planet, which is usually what comes to most people's mind when we think about sustainability. So the planet, so environmental sustainability. But yeah, so it's basically 3 key areas. And this article, I know, is pretty general. It kind of just brushes on a lot of different topics, and that's fine. I just thought that it had some really great words, some great vocabulary that we can use for talking about this topic. And then I want to look at some future articles that will look at more specific things. So here we're just gonna learn a bit some general topic or general vocabulary for talking about this topic, and then we will get into specific things in the next couple of weeks. Okay, all right, so I'm gonna read this so we can hear the pronunciation. I'm gonna flag some words that I like, that I thought were interesting, that you might find interesting as well. Yeah, so let's get right to it. So why the Sustainable Development Goals for 2030 are more important than ever. And I'm going to note too, this article is a little bit old. It makes a lot of reference to the pandemic, but that's fine. We're just here for the words, we're here for the vocabulary, and that is great. All right. Okay. So 2020 was supposed to be an important milestone for international cooperation, with major global conferences on biodiversity, climate change, gender equality, and more set to take place. So already we have some great words here. So milestone, so an important milestone, basically a very significant event maybe, or an achievement. So a milestone, it was supposed to be a milestone for international cooperation. And I just want to point out here, there's 2 syllables here. So it's not cooperation, but cooperation. So cooperation with major global conferences on biodiversity, climate change, gender equality, and more set to take place. So biodiversity, we're talking about biodiversity. We're talking about all the different plants and animals that live together in a area, and the more diverse, like the more there are, the better it is, basically. And gender equality, basically, are men and women, do they have equal rights? Are they treated the same? And all of this is set to take place. So if something is set to take place, that means that it is programmed to take place, it's scheduled to take place. Yeah, so all of this was supposed to happen. Okay. Yet a year of full expectations and updates was ultimately cancelled due to the global pandemic. Okay. While COP26 managed to take place in 2021, many other major summits continued to be delayed or hosted virtually, which comes with its own dangers, making it more difficult in finding a path forward. Okay, so we had this summit happen, many other major summits. And summit, so basically just another word for conference or a very important meeting. So a summit, conference, very important meeting. So they were delayed or hosted virtually, so hosted online, making it more difficult to find a path forward. So finding a way to move forward. Yeah. So this is why the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals for 2030, or more simply SDGs, are more important than ever. SDGs can help us recover more quickly from COVID-19, but it isn't a one-off occurrence. So when we're talking about something one-off, if something happens, if something is one-off, that happens one time. But they're saying that this isn't just an event that will happen one time. They're saying that the SDGs will be helpful in multiple other instances as well. Okay, so it's one connection to a larger change of climate inactivity, habitat destruction, disrupting public health systems, widening revenue, the gender gap, and the gender gap that we're all paying for. So here, climate inactivity, usually we know the word activity, but here it's like a negative, so inactivity. So there is no activity. So basically here, climate inactivity just refers to us not doing enough to fight against climate change, and habitat destruction. Habitat referring to places where animals live, basically, so forests and wetlands. So the destruction of the places where animals live, their habitat. And again, the gender gap. So just like that, those differences between how men and women are treated, basically. And usually it has to do with maybe pay or opportunities, things like that. All right. So what are the Sustainable Development Goals for 2030? The Sustainable Development Goals, also known as the Global Goals, are universal goals designed to end poverty, protect the planet, and ensure that everyone can enjoy peace and prosperity by 2030 in each United Nations member state. So something universal, basically something that everybody will do all around the planet, everywhere, so that we could all enjoy, right, peace and prosperity. And prosperity basically being the idea that we have success and enough wealth, basically, basically the things that we need to live. So having enough money, having enough success, and being okay there. So peace and prosperity by 2030 in each United Nations member state. They are centered around 6 themes. So dignity, basically people, if people, how worthy people feel that they are worthy of respect, having value. So dignity, just people. So dignity, people, the environment, partnerships, so nations, people, countries working together, justice, so everybody being treated fairly through laws, and prosperity, again, having enough wealth, money to live an ideal, decent life. These goals go beyond economic development. So how the economy is developing to encourage social development. The SDGs aim to promote and tackle other major global issues, including climate change, economic inequality, innovation, sustainable consumption, peace, and equity, culminating in 17 goals, 196 specific aims, and 232 targets. Okay, so a lot in here. Yeah, so they aim to promote, basically advocate or advertise almost these global issues. And you notice here too, we have tackle coming up. We like to say to tackle a problem, just basically another way to say to solve a problem, basically. Tackle something means you try and solve something, basically. Try to do something, kind of. Yeah. So they're looking to sort of solve all of these global issues, including climate change, economic inequality. So basically, that gap, the large gap between rich people and poor people, and the distribution of wealth. So economic inequality has to do with that. Innovation, great word. So innovation has to do with the creation of new ideas or concepts or the new ways of doing things. So innovation, great word. Sustainable consumption. So consumption has to do with the consuming something, using something. So consumption has to do with, the using of things. And in this case, we're talking about products, basically products and services. You know, we live in a society where we need to buy things and always buy more things. Use those things to buy more things, right? But sustainable consumption has to do with, using products and services in a way that minimizes the impact on the environment. So instead of consuming, getting rid of things and then getting more things, it's more like recycling things, using things for a very long time, maybe fixing things. So focus on sustainability instead. And finally here, equity. So, are people being treated fairly? Do they have equal opportunities? So equity, do with people basically being treated equal, yeah. And culminating in, basically resulting in 17 goals, 169 specific aims, and 232 targets. Okay. So can we win? Sorry. Is this a race we can win? So, we have witnessed some great accomplishments over the last decade, so over the last 10 years. Global school attendance has increased by 89%, while child mortality and extreme poverty rates have dropped. So child mortality has to do with deaths. So basically, the rate of children dying has dropped, and extreme poverty rates have also dropped. Many other targets are showing slow but steady development, but no victory has been secured. So very slow increase, but we have not arrived at where we need to be yet. The world is not on schedule to meet the SDGs by 2030. as the SDGs 2020 report demonstrates. So if you're not on schedule to do something, it means that we're not in time to do something. So if you're on schedule, it means that things are happening at the correct pace. You are going to reach the timeline. But here that is not happening, so we're not doing enough. We are not on schedule. We are behind schedule, we would say. Basically means to be late or some sort of delay. So right now we're behind schedule. So we still have a way to go to the finish line. So we have a lot to do to get to the finish line in 2030. And the COVID-19 crisis has already threatened to slow us down. All right. So prior to the global pandemic, research showed that 135 million people were suffering from hunger and food insecurity at crisis levels. So food insecurity, that has to do with a lack of access to food. So basically people either can't get the food that they need, or maybe they can't afford the food. So food insecurity is basically that lack of being able to get the food that we need. And if you're suffering, that means that you're harmed from something. Suffer, basically, be harmed and be in a bad situation. So they're suffering, so they're being impacted by hunger and food insecurity at crisis levels, at very significant levels. The pandemic's aftershocks, so everything that happened after, have pushed an additional 130 million people to the brink of hunger. And if we're at the brink of something, we're basically at the edge of something, or at the limits of something. So to be at the brink of something, at the edge. Yeah. So almost 2.7 billion workers, or nearly 81% of the global workforce, were affected by lockdown measures, many of whom were not covered by social protection measures. So here, the workforce, that just refers to basically all the people that can work. So the work, everybody who works, we can refer to them as, in general, as the workforce. So they were affected by lockdown measures, so when we couldn't go out of our homes, and they were not protected by any social systems. School closures affected 91% of the world's students, many of whom are in undeveloped nations where technology cannot assist their education. So an underdeveloped nation is basically a country that is not that's less developed, maybe economically, or maybe they have less industry than other nations, and then maybe they don't have enough money to invest in infrastructure or education, healthcare, those sort of things. So the underdeveloped nations, we would call them that. Many healthcare workers, carers, people who take care of others, and informal workers working the front lines in the fight against COVID-19 are women, yet they face increased incidences of domestic violence, in addition to the persistent threat to their health and well-being. So, yeah, so an incident is just basically another word for an event. So there were more events of domestic violence. So we know that what violence is, and something domestic, that's something that happens at home. So here we're talking about violence that happens between people who live together, basically. Yeah, so all of that in addition to the persistent threat. So an ongoing threat, basically, that won't go away, something persistent, just keeps trying. It's always there, it's ongoing. So they had a persistent, ongoing threat to their health and well-being. The number of okay, so now we're talking about the environment, right? So the number of protected areas is growing and forest cover loss is slowing down. So now we're talking about the environment. So a protected area, that's going to be sort of like a maybe a nature reserve, or just an area, maybe like a forest or a wetland that has been designated as being important and humans cannot develop it. So it's protected some way. So humans cannot destroy it, right? All right. So we have more protected areas now, which is great. And we are not destroying forests as fast as we used to. So that's really great. So it's slowing down. However, habitat destruction continues along with biodiversity loss. So again, there is a reduction in the amount of different plants and animals in a region. Maybe they're going extinct. So along with biodiversity loss and ecosystem collapse. So we know that the ecosystem is basically all the things that live in an area and how they interact with one another and how they affect one another, right? And then an ecosystem collapse is basically maybe when too many plants or animals die off, and then that system can no longer sustain itself. It can no longer exist. And so that's when we see an ecosystem collapse. So too many alterations, it cannot function as normal, and the whole thing collapses, the whole thing falls apart, basically. All right, yes. According to experts, a new infectious disease will arrive in humans every 4 months, with roughly 75% of all new disease, and roughly 75% of all new diseases can be traced back to animals, with COVID-19 being the most recent. Okay, yeah, so they're saying that a new infectious disease, so something infectious, is one that spreads easily because other people can catch it easily. They become infected by the disease, basically. So an infectious disease makes people get infected easily. Yeah, and they're predicting we will see one happen, a new one every 4 months. And roughly 75% of all new diseases can be traced back. So we can investigate, we can link them back to animals. So if we keep going in this direction, we will fall short of many of the 2030 agenda goals. So if we fall short of a goal, that just basically means that you don't reach that goal. So to fall short of something, you don't do enough to get your goal. So we're falling short. The old business model was no longer viable, was no longer doable, no longer able to succeed. Something viable is something that's possible, basically. However, it's not too late to make changes. Okay. So this is where the UN's SDGs come in. So this is where they become relevant, important, and why they are more important now than ever. Investing in a proper response to one SDG goal can help us achieve many more others. In fact, all 17 SDGs are deeply interconnected. So to invest in something, if we're investing in something, invest in something, that preposition really important. So it basically means to give maybe your time, money, your energy to something, usually a goal or an initiative that you believe in. So investing in one goal will have an impact on the other because they're very interconnected, they're intertwined, we might say. That they're very related to one another. So if dealt with in an inclusive and climate-sensitive manner, recovery from this worldwide epidemic and economic slump might provide a significant opportunity for the betterment of the environment, public health, poverty reduction, and job creation. So if dealt with, basically in an inclusive manner. So something inclusive includes everyone and everything, basically, or all the different sort of parts of something. So something inclusive. And a climate sensitive. So this is kind of interesting. Something sensitive means that you do it in a way that is like really takes something into consideration. So they're saying if we do it in a way that considers just how important the climate situation is or aims to take care of the climate, that's what they mean here. So recovery from this worldwide epidemic and economic slump. So an economic slump is basically a period where the economy doesn't do very well. So kind of like a low period. Yeah, so basically, yeah, an economic slump when the economy doesn't do well. So it might provide a significant opportunity for the betterment of the environment. So basically, it will be better for the environment. Public health, poverty reduction, reducing poverty, and job creation. So poverty reduction, state of reducing poverty. Yeah. All right. So achieving SDGs is a matter of protecting nature. The COVID-19 pandemic has been a wake-up call for citizens of Earth. So it's basically an alarm, a flag for citizens of Earth, all the people of Earth. The health of our planet and its ecosystems is directly related to our own health and the health of the economy. Protecting and restoring forests, mangroves, marine and coastal habitats help us achieve many goals, from tackling climate change to assisting millions of people escaping poverty. So to restore something basically means to put something back to its previous condition. So anything to do with restoration or restoring means putting it back the way it was. And again, here we can see this collocation: to tackle a problem, to tackle climate change often comes up. And to escape something. Assisting millions of people in escaping poverty. Basically, to escape something means to get out of a bad situation. So as we rebuild from this global pandemic, it is critical now that we reassess our relationship with nature. So it's critical now, it's important now that we reassess, that we assess again our relationship with nature. Achieving SDGs is a matter of listening to science. We live in an age of distrust of evidence, facts, and science. It only takes one click to spread misinformation and conspiracy theories. So, one click, they mean like click of the mouse. And misinformation. So that is basically untrue or incorrect information. And conspiracy theories. So conspiracy theories are kind of interesting. They are basically these theories that they're not real, but they're basically like a theory that explains sort of how an event or a situation happens because of some sort of secret plot or reason, or there's something being kept from the public. So yeah, so a lot of misinformation, a lot of talk about conspiracy theories, hypotheses about like why things are happening in the world. So it is the work of the scientists, academics, and experts who will guide us out of this pandemic and propel us towards a future where all the SDGs are realized. So they will guide us out, they will lead us out of this pandemic and push us towards the future where all the SDGs are realized, where we are able to achieve them. You realize a goal, you achieve that goal, you make it happen. So evidence-based policy making is crucial. So evidence-based, something that is made based on evidence, things that we can see. Climate experts have warned that unless we cut emissions by 7.6% per year over the next decade, we will not be able to keep global temperature rises below the 1.5 degree limit. Ecological crises will exacerbate food shortages, extreme weather events, natural disasters, as well as increase the risk of public health crises, much like the current epidemic. Now, this is an interesting word. I don't know if you've noticed when I said that, because usually we know this word. Usually we know the word crisis. Crisis, this is the singular. But here, actually, we have the plural of crisis, and the pronunciation is actually crises. So very interesting, this one here. So again, crisis, singular, but we have crises, plural. So an ecological crises will exacerbate, another huge word, public food shortages. If you exacerbate something, that basically means that you're making a bad problem worse. To exacerbate something, you make it even worse. Yeah, so these crises will exacerbate food shortages, extreme weather events, national disasters, as well as increase the risk of public health crises. Again, much like the current epidemic. So some great words there. So at the national corporate and individual levels, achieving SDGs is a matter of making wise decisions. Companies must take advantage of the opportunity to prioritize a greener economy, abolish fossil fuel subsidies, and assist in the creation of green employment that gives out quality jobs while protecting society. So if we prioritize something, we make something a priority, the most important things. So we need to make these things the most important things. We need to prioritize greener economy, abolish fuel subsidies. If we abolish something, that means to get rid of it. Get rid of it completely. So we're going to get rid of, they want to get rid of fuel subsidies and assisted the creation of green employment that gives out quality jobs. So quality jobs, these are decent, high-paying jobs, while protecting society. On an individual level, the responsibility lies with each of us to adopt a more sustainable lifestyle and lower our overall carbon footprint. Basically, to adopt something means to like take up and do something in this case, so we can lower our overall carbon footprint. And you'll see this word come up, or this phrase come up a lot. And that's just basically has to do with like how much destruction or your activities cause, basically. So literally, it's like the amount of carbon dioxide that your activities produce. Yeah, but we could also think of it in terms of just like the amount of waste, and just how much of the environment is basically destroyed based on our activities. Achieving SDGs requires cooperation. SDGs serve as a reminder that without shared responsibility and cooperation, so again, cooperation, nothing is possible. We risk leaving a number of people behind if we don't share the blame. Now, I've underlined this one just because I want you to notice how this verb here, risk, is followed by the ing form of another verb. So that's one of those ones that are always followed by that pattern. So we risk doing something, we risk losing something. Anyways, we risk leaving a large number of people behind if we don't share the blame. The blame here, just like who is at fault? Who is responsible for doing something bad? And I should write this here too. So to risk doing thing. Risk. So that's a good one. All right. We must stand with those who have suffered the most: women, children, low income communities, people with disabilities, refugees, asylum seekers, and displaced people. So, people with low income, they don't earn a lot of money. Refugees, basically people who are fleeing, they are running from a country in order to escape danger or a bad situation. Asylum seekers, these are people that are in a different country and now they are asking that country to protect them, basically have asylum, so in another country, so they're looking to stay there and be protected. And displaced people is just a general term. If something is displaced, it means to be out of place. So in the wrong location, basically, right? So, and these are basically people that have had to leave their homes, maybe due to war or some natural disaster or a really bad situation. So these people are currently without sort of having a home, right? So they've been moved. We must be informed and hold those in power accountable for all of this to happen. So if you hold someone accountable for something, you make them responsible for something. So, yeah, so another great sort of phrase there, to hold someone accountable for something, make them ensure that they are taking the blame, they're being the ones responsible for something. The best thing we can do for future generations is to keep the wheel turning, so to keep things moving, keep the conversation going, and motivate each other to do better for the planet. Great. Okay, great. So there we go. Lots of really great words and phrases in here. Of course, if you have any other further questions, you're more than welcome to book a conversation class with me or a lesson so we can talk about this. I really hope that this is helpful. I hope that you've maybe learned some interesting phrases and words that you could use for talking about sustainability. Yeah, so I'm going to go ahead. I will put this video on YouTube, I think, so you can have it as a reference. I will also take these notes and I will put them in a document so you'll be able to download them as well and check them out. I highly recommend, of course, reading this article again, seeing what phrases you find useful, because there was definitely a lot in that article. And then, of course, you can come back to this live class, study it for the vocabulary, pronunciation, and then if you'd like, you can book a class directly with me and we can talk about this. You can book one class or you can book a couple. I have lots of materials, lots of things to talk about, and we can go from there. Yeah, okay. So thanks so much for coming out, those of you who came out. It was really fantastic. And thanks so much for those of you who are watching this in the future. I am planning potentially on doing something like this in the future for other articles, so be sure to check back from that, and be sure to check back for that. And like I said, the future articles are going to look at topics more specifically, so but I have some good ones that I want to look at, so I hope you enjoy them. Okay, thanks so much again, everybody, and I will see all of you next time. All right, bye.